we wanted to chat about Lord of the Rings this evening. And quite simply, why it's the best.
And why does everybody within fantasy, everybody within fiction, particularly the authors, for the most part, why do they all speak about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings with reference? That's what the epic is. It is a grand tale that gives you something to aspire to, something to hope for. What you are meant to have is a desire to be like Aragorn at the Black Gate, or to be like one of the riders of Rohirrim at Pelennor Fields, or to be like Sam carrying his best friend up a mountain to complete his task.
It has this way, as Peter Kreeft would say, of making our world seem even more real and more awesome than before.
Everything looks hopeless. It seems like we've already been defeated. And then the Rohirrim ride across the hill, and they charge. It's the greatest hope appearing in the most hopeless time. Then after that battle is won, your king says, guess what, we're not done yet. Now we attack. Now we go to the Black Gate, and we meet Sauron there, one last time.
What did we drink it tonight, Ethan?
Two things, because, when given the option between beer and whiskey, the obvious choice is to not choose and take both. So,
Indeed.
I have Guinness Extra Stout in my pint glass.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask,
the best
may I
and
ask
most
what
proper way to drink Guinness.
What type of pint glass is that, if I may ask?
Chesterton's pint glass. It has his face on it.
Yep. That came from the campus pub, ladies and gentlemen, that me and Ethan went to, which was a fine place indeed. A very dignified place.
A very fine, very dignified place, designed after the eagle and child. Or, as they, in the circles and Tolkien himself like to call it, the bird and the baby.
Also, as a spoiler for what our topic, well, you've clicked on the video, you know what our topic is. The Chesterton's pub had only 2 beers, brewed exclusively for it, called the Green Dragon Ale and the South Farthing Stout. So we were spoiled like kings.
The only brew for the brave and true comes from the Green Dragon. And I have Quiet Man, the finest whiskey in the world.
Yeah, you haven't gotten to say that in a while.
The best whiskey in the world and the best beer in the world. I couldn't be happier right now.
It's a good combo.
The only way I could be is if I had the best pipe tobacco in the world, and I have yet to figure out what that is.
Got a lot of options. That, I forget the name of the place that Jimmy Aiken gets his blends from, but he has one custom made for him there, called like the St. Michael blend or something, and you can ask for them to make you that.
I should get more into pipe smoking. That way, when I'm famous and influential, I can have a tobacconist actually blend something for me.
It's got to be into it.
Maybe I'll call.
But I would recommend it, even though I am a certified non-pipe smoker.
Maybe I'll call the Gatlin Burlier down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, because that's the place that I first bought a pipe and tobacco from. So I would have some loyalty to them. But also there is a very fine tobacconist here in Missouri, about an hour drive from where I live, called the Missouri Meerschaum Pipe Company. So I may ask them to design for me a specific pipe and create a blend of tobacco specifically for me.
Well, you've got a wood shop, so why not make the pipe yourself?
That's also a good point. But they also have the right corn cobs. And let's be honest, what's more awesome than a corncob pipe?
A collaboration.
It's also it's a good idea just to have a steady supply of corncob pipes in case it should snow enough for you to build a snowman.
This is true. This is very true.
That was the argument that I gave my wife when I asked to buy the corncob pipes, and she said, that's fair. See, this way I can smoke a pipe with the snowman. So, yeah, you have a point.
Frosty will be pleased. He will not be lonely for once. What I am drinking this evening is going back to the New Riff single barrel. So, I forget the details on it. It's just a good whiskey. It's also the only bourbon that I have at the moment because I've polished off all the Four Roses small batch. But yeah, I have this and I have Scotch. is basically all I have at the moment, and I can't really complain. Those are good. Those are good and quality hard liquors of choice.
I should also mention that this is the Quiet Man 8 year aged.
And how is that different from the base?
It's left in the barrel longer.
Don't they use different barrels for that though?
I don't know. It tastes better. And it's more expensive, so there had better be a difference for it.
I'd hope so. So, yeah, I've only had it once, and that was at your old place. And that was fine indeed. That was real good.
Yeah, somebody ordered this for me and sent it and had it sent to me. I wonder who that was.
I wonder.
Yeah.
It was his birthday
Awful
recently,
nice.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I'm 28.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the goal of having 4 children by the time I get to 30. I have 3. Do I hear 4?
I hear, can I just get married?
I'm the one currently winning at life.
By some measures, yes. So, by actually, like, all the measures. So, all the measures that matter. But, that being said, I'm still here and I'm still kicking. Which is about all I can do, you know? I'm just very feisty. And the Lord knows it. He's like, all right, you're gonna, you know, I'll have a laugh at your expense. Literally for all of eternity. So. But, speaking of laughs and good times, and good liquor and good beer, we wanted to chat about Lord of the Rings this evening.
And this
And
will certainly
quite
not
simply-
be the last time.
Oh no. But we have a very small matter to cover, which is simply why it's the best. I think that's indisputable. But, you know, some might dispute it anyway. So,
The best
worth
in
having
pretty
an
much
explanation.
Pretty much every way, too.
Well, I would say so. And not just why we think it's the best, but why everybody has loved it ever since its release. I forget. There were stories of, was it Peter Creef's father or something, who was in the Navy or something? And how men were lining up, you know, basically putting their place in line to read the book. And that's just one small isolated example. But I mean, even when you read Tolkien's letters, there's a sense that, yeah, this thing is really well loved and he's getting a lot of acclaim for it. And he's not really changing because of it, but he's having to do a lot of things because of it.
Yeah.
And he mentions the bother it causes.
And there's a lot of responses to fan letters there, just from people writing to him. And that's not all of his letters and not all of the responses are in that book.
True.
That was compiled by his son.
Mm-hmm.
So
There's a lot of deep
imagine he
questions in
got-
them, too.
he got a sack full of mail every day from a lot of people. And most of it was probably just, "Thank you, Professor. I love your book."
Which is all you really need. So,
Which I'm sure he enjoyed those a lot more than the overly nerdy questions about the nitty-gritty specifics of the languages of Middle-earth. Which I'm sure he'll love to talk about, but it does the heart far better just to have somebody write to you and say, "I really liked your book."
certainly can. So,
Which
yeah,
if I'm
some of
ever
the deep
as
letters are great,
successful
but
as him, I will direct my publisher and direct anyone to have any fan communication be sent by actual mail, because I would like to have something actually tangible to look at and to hold in my hand, which is for most of them the closest that I'll ever be able to come to shaking the hand of the man that wrote it.
mm-hmm. That would be the perfect way to go the opposite of the current age of the internet, which is let's use the comment section. Like, let's not use the comment section. Let's not even bother to use email. Like, you're going to have to put all the effort in of handwriting this guy a letter.
Yeah, you want to write me you want to talk to me? You write me a letter, and I will sit down and read it. And some of them I might read to my children. And if I get too many of them, well, guess what their chores are now? Go through them and sort them and help me reply to them.
A whole house of workers that is growing every couple years at this point. So
Yeah.
it's not even every couple of years. It's faster than that.
I remember telling somebody that I wanted 4 kids by 30, and she goes, "How old are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 27." And she goes, "You know, you have time. You can slow down. This is your 3rd. You can slow down." I'm like, "No." I said, "I want 4 kids by 30. 5 would be even better." And I
They're
only
gonna
got
come at
2
the
years
pace they
left
come, right?
until I'm 30, so it's, chop chop. We gotta. And 4 was
Man.
my wife's minimum.
Oh, wow.
She said, "At a minimum, I want 4." I was like, "Is there a maximum?" And she said, "Well, not really, but more than 7 is daunting."
You guys are awesome.
Oh, my wife is awesome.
You are too. So,
More examples of why my wife is awesome. Anybody need pumpkin bread in the oven?
What's the verdict? Not that it needs one. It's your wife's pumpkin bread fresh from the oven. Like,
Said I'm better than everybody else because I'm married to her and she makes this.
all right. I'd argue with you, but I'm single, so I have no basis on which to argue right now. I have no basis yet
Yeah,
to argue.
you have no basis to argue as of yet. It's a matter of opinion, one which you have to share with me, but is still subject to change.
Oh, it's bound to change. Just a matter of when. But Lord of the Rings. Why is it the best? Why is it acknowledged to be the best by, I would say, most? I have no studies to back that up. I have not surveyed people. I'm not aware of any surveys of people, but I feel like most people would say Lord of the Rings.
And why does everybody speak? Everybody within fantasy, everybody within fiction, particularly the authors, for the most part, why do they all speak about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings with reference?
Yeah. And what I'd like to start with in covering this is to highlight that it's not a fantasy, I think, in the sense that most modern readers would think of fantasy. It's properly defined as an epic, or an epic fantasy. And I'll let you, Ethan, talk about what an epic is and why we need them, why they're actually important.
Well, epic fantasy is a subgenre of fantasy, and it is usually defined by some, long, grand adventure, some great evil, mystic powers, some heroism, and all that. But the epic part is what I want to focus on, because really, yes, The Lord of the Rings would fall in modern terms into the epic fantasy category, but it is more epic than fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what does epic mean?
Epic in the classical sense usually refers to a work of poetry that is far too long just to be a ballad, even though Chesterton's Ballad of the White Horse is also technically an epic poem.
Okay.
Typically it is a poem in the sense that it is written in verse that tells a story of some kind, usually of some great event. And typically there are almost impossible circumstances. Like Achilles being unable to be injured except at his heel, or Beowulf tearing off the arm of a troll. So that's really why The Lord of the Rings falls into the epic category, because a lot of things seem too great to be real, but also it does something which epics are meant to do, which is give us aspirational characters. And while telling a story and giving us something to aspire to, it tells us something inherent about the nature of man, about virtue, about heroism. Basically, it tells us more about ourselves than just the average novel probably would. Which, incidentally, is why I tend to get my hackles up a little bit when people refer to the Lord of the Rings books as novels, because they're not. Tolkien would never have referred to them as novels. They are epics, and he wrote them as an epic mythology. So even though fantasy was really... The word fantasy was not really used for a genre back then, and Tolkien is the father of modern fantasy. I don't think anybody would really object to that.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis has a hand in it, but it's primarily Tolkien. And there's that American guy that wrote the Chronicles of Prydian, whose name I forget. But Tolkien, being the father of modern fantasy, maybe would not have referred to the Lord of the Rings as fantasy because that word was not used in context.
Mm-hmm.
But he would probably, in his day and in his terminology, they would fall under the category of epic myth, like the Iliad and the Odyssey and
Mm-hmm.
the Aeneid. The only difference between the Lord of the Rings and the Aeneid is that the Lord of the Rings is not entirely in verse.
Yeah, the verse is pretty limited.
Really, it's a musical.
Yeah, you can make that argument.
So, in some cases, it's the only truly really good musical that's ever been written.
Well, at least to the mind of a curmudgeon, so.
To the mind of a curmudgeon, yes. The only one that's good in every way, at least. But basically, that's what the epic is. It is a grand tale that gives you an aspiration. Basically, it makes you want to be better. Gives you something to aspire to, something to hope for. It's not a novel, because a novel is something for you to relate to, or something for you to identify with, or something for you to recognize. You're not meant to have that in The Lord of the Rings. What you are meant to have is a desire to be like Aragorn at the Black Gate, or to be like one of the riders of Rohirrim at Pelennor Fields, or to be like Sam carrying his best friend up a mountain to complete his task. That is what The Lord of the Rings is supposed to be for you. You're not supposed to sit there and read it and go, oh, I just feel Frodo so much right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I can relate to that. That might be an element of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't really talk about the struggle of the human condition without somebody being able to relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's certainly not the purpose. The purpose is, look at Frodo, look at Sam, look at how good they are, and be like them. Which is kind of more what makes it a little bit different from a novel. Because the novel wants you to see yourself in somebody else. You're not meant to see yourself in Frodo. You want to make yourself like him. You should want to make yourself like Aragorn. You should want to make yourself like Gandalf. And have virtues to embody, not see yourself in somebody, because if you see yourself in the protagonist of a story, there's nothing for you to aspire to. You're just already there.
There definitely, to your point, there definitely is that element of I can relate to this thing that I see Frodo doing, right? Or this thing that I see Boromir doing, or this thing that I see Sam doing. Or things that I relate to in the sense that they are doing this thing that I really desire to be doing. Such as Sam coming home at the end of it to Rosie and yellow light and a fire in the hearth and dinner at the ready and he was expected. Like, I mean, that's amazing. Like, we all, whether we have that or we want that, but there is a sense in which we relate to it, but it's also aspirational. Mm-hmm. It's not just they're me. It is they are the best versions of me.
They are what I wish to be.
Yeah. Yeah, what I wish to be.
I think, particularly, I'm glad you mentioned both Boromir and Sam, because there is something in Boromir and Sam, particularly that all men desire. In Boromir, there is the desire for a last stand. I'm pretty sure the majority of men, if you asked their ideal death, a lot of them would say, at least somewhere high on the list, is to die fighting for what was right.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting to protect somebody. giving my life for somebody else. Self-sacrificial. But also in Sam, there is this aspirational, I just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could have achieved the Nobel Prize. You know, there was a trend for a long time of, you know, athletes who would finish a race or somebody that would win some competition, and then the reporter would come up and say, "What are you going to do now?" And then most of the time they're expected to plug some product. The best thing for him to say to, "What are you going to do now? You just won this race. What are you going to do now?" The best thing for him to say should be, "I'm going to go home and embrace my children and love my wife."
Because that is what it's all for. You know, and how can I relate to that? I can apply that to my own work. I can apply that to whatever activity I'm doing. But yeah, what's the point of this? Why do I work so hard? Maybe I like my job, maybe I hate my job. But why? What's the point? It's so that I get to come home. It's not so I can climb the corporate ladder. You know?
Yeah.
It's so that I can get to come home. It's not so I can make more money, it's so that I can come home.
A life lived outside of your home is a life poorly lived.
Yeah.
It's empty.
Because it's so aligned with what the reality of our world is, and I'll talk more about this in a bit, we constantly get these life lessons out of it. Mm-hmm. At every single turn. But another way to sum that up is, like you said, it's aspirational. The characters are aspirational in a different way. I mean, look at, you know, Boromir he's fought his entire life, you know, to fight back the enemy, to fight back Mordor, to hold Gondor against it, and protect the other realms, to some extent, the other kingdoms. And, yeah, he wants a single tool that he think will fix that will finally give him the edge to accomplish his desires, falls to the temptation, realizes he's really screwed up, and then what does he promptly do? He does the only thing he can. Yeah, he repents by giving up his life.
Yeah.
You know? And he gets to confess to his king afterwards. And be forgiven, you know? So my thesis for Lord of the Rings is perhaps represented by that and by Sam coming home and by the entire thing. It is the most real work of fantasy that exists, and it's also the most transcendental work of fantasy that exists.
And
Why do I say?
To your point further about Boromir, I just want to interject something that I have just thought of that I think bears saying, and really we could honestly just have an entire episode just about Boromir.
We really could.
And we will now. Make a note. But what does Aragorn do while Boromir is dying? He puts his sword in his hand. Because a warrior should die with his sword in his hand. When you have fought the good fight, your weapon is in your hand.
Mm-hmm. It's your life purpose. It's your mission.
It is the symbol of your call. You know, our Lord, I frequently say this, that our Lord did say that he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. He didn't say that was necessarily a bad thing. He didn't say a death by the sword was a bad or wrong death. He just said that if you're going to live by the sword, you should understand that you were likely going to die by it. And you have to be open to that. Which is why you cannot do that rashly. Because he also says that if you don't own a sword, go out and buy one.
He does say that. That's overlooked a lot. Yeah. Well said.
Which means you ought to be a warrior. And you ought to fight when you need to. You ought to be able to fight. But you also, above all else, ought to desire just to come home. Just to sit down by the fire, take a breath, and say...
So again, that's the entire point. As
And
we've
that
said
is
to
why-
death on this podcast, what matters most. Focus on what matters most. The Lord of the Rings
Intrinsically.
knows how to do that.
Yeah.
But back to my thesis. Yeah, it's the most real work of fantasy and the most transcendental.
The most true.
The most true is a good way to sum it up. But why is it the most real? I would say that it's because everything that the characters of Lord of the Rings represent, everything of the world that within Lord of the Rings, is just a fantasy version of our own, but not a fake one. What do I mean by that? The world is constructed the same way, just in terms of what makes it up. So it doesn't require elements of the world that are fantastical. It doesn't require a crazy magic system. It doesn't require things blown way out of proportion. Even though there are magical creatures and such that are larger than life. But our world has humans, their world has humans. Our world has magical creatures, their world has magical creatures. You know, we have angels, they have angels. We have demons, they have demons. We have weird stuff that we can't understand, and they have weird stuff they can't understand. Like, where in the hell did Tom Bombadil come from? You know?
Or his wife. Like, she's just called the River Daughter, and that's it.
Yeah. Like, all
okay,
right.
she's the daughter
We're
of the
gonna
river.
Are we going to explain that? No, we're not. We're really not.
Because I don't need to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one
they
of my
exist.
favorite things about Tolkien as an author, is that sometimes when people ask him to explain things, he just says, no, I'm not going to tell you, because I don't have to. Now sit down and shut up and enjoy the story.
Yeah. Well, and there's actually an even better explanation, which he himself doesn't know.
Yeah. Like, just
he
showed
doesn't
up,
know.
That's what was appropriate for the story, so...
Yeah. Like, his explanation for where Bombadil comes from is basically, he is. And not as in he's
exists.
God, but just, yeah, he's just there. And maybe he represents a figment of my imagination, you know, which is pacifist and such. But
A portion
I
of
also
him, yeah.
really don't know. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
He's just there. And that's all that needs to be the answer. The fact of something's existence is enough explanation of the fact that it exists. I don't need to give a scientific answer to, you know, where exactly did he come from. Maybe one would be helpful, but not fundamentally.
And I just love that when they meet Tom Bombadil, Frodo hands him the ring and he puts it on and the ring disappears.
Mm-hmm. But there's a
So it's
parallel
like,
between that and our...
he just doesn't follow the rules, I see.
Yeah, he just doesn't. He's... All right. But there's a parallel there with our own world, right? Like, we can explain a lot of things by, well, God did that. God exists. And then somebody might get in their head like, well, I still want to science that out. I'm like, okay, go science it out. And then they go science it out, and they realize, this is just way better designed than I thought it was. This required an intelligent designer. Mm-hmm. And then a sub-portion of them are like, well, wait a second. We can still science that out. Okay. The cycle just keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
Again and again and again. And ironically, a lot of great scientists were Catholics, so they understood that you could do both at the same time.
And a
But
lot of the
they knew
slightly
what
less great scientists were Protestant. But still were devout Protestant and still believed in God.
Yep.
And still were praying men. But that's really
Good.
neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Although I will
point-
interject that proof of intelligent design is just the existence of the snake. Just that species of animal, the snake. You cannot design... A human could not design a better mousetrap than a snake.
That's just one example of an infinite amount, right?
Yeah.
So, but my point here is there are so many parallels between that world and our world, even though it is a fantasy. And ours is not. It's real. So that's the sense in which I mean it's the most real. What do I mean by it being the most transcendental? That, you could say, means two things. One, it has this way as Peter Kreeft would say, of making our world seem even more real and more awesome than before. So he would say that the trees in Lord of the Rings are more tree-like, in part because they seem more alive, and they kind of are. They can walk
Not
around
just the
and
ones
such.
that talk.
Yeah, but they're more tree-like, and the meadows are more meadow-like, and the mountains are more mountain-like.
And
Everything
the
is
houses
more
are more house-like.
Yeah,
Even the things that are made by men. Minas Tirith is the most castle-like castle that has ever been castled.
it's an amazing city. You know, the 7-tiered city with its 7 gates.
Edoras is the most mead hall-like mead hall that has ever mead halled.
Yeah. So the whole thing about like the characters being aspirational, the very makeup of the world, the very creations within the world, bear that same quality too. But also because of the aspirational aspect of it, it ends up pointing to the driving force behind the entire Lord of the Rings, which is the God of Lord of the Rings. You cannot explain Lord of the Rings without just divine intervention from time to time, but also just divine guidance.
Which
Sending
really, he
Gan-
actually just is. He just is our god that Tolkien put into the Lord. He just put into Middle Earth.
He pretty much is. So it is fitting that be the way within Lord of the Rings, but then because Lord of the Rings is aspirational, it then directs us to think the same way about our own world. And so we are more naturally pointed towards towards God himself, and towards the beauty of all that he has made, and including us. So, yeah. I guess you could sum that up by saying it's aspirational, but not just the characters. I don't think any other work of fantasy that I've read or am aware of comes close to that. Mm-hmm. And not that I've read a ton of fantasy, but the Chronicles of Narnia are awesome, but they are also more like parables and direct allegory, the thing that he didn't like. And so
they are for children.
They are for children, and they are more of a story that you tell children to get a point across than a story that you tell for the sake of telling a great story. And the story that you tell for the sake of telling a great story will always be superior.
It's also worth mentioning, though, that The Hobbit is also for children.
It is.
So
but then again, we're not talking about The Hobbit.
You can't talk about The Lord of the Rings without talking about The Hobbit.
Well, true.
The professor would agree with me.
He would, but we're still not saying why The Hobbit is the best. Although The Hobbit is amazing.
The Hobbit being effectively the prequel to The Lord of the Rings. Although, as an interesting statement of fact, it was not intended to be. What was it intended to be? Tolkien actually, I think it was intended kind of to be its own thing, but he rewrote it so that it would more accurately reflect the same world as The Lord of the Rings after the publication of The Lord of the Rings. Which, its first publication, I think, was 1938. And when was The Fellowship of the Ring published? 1947? Or 52?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was later even. But 52 would be my better guess.
52 sounds right. But I'm pretty sure Tolkien actually revised it to so that there would be more continuity between it and The Lord of the Rings, because after he wrote The Hobbit and then he wrote The Lord of the Rings, he kind of went, oh, there are some disconnects.
Yeah, some problems.
Which an original 1938 edition of The Hobbit is astoundingly expensive.
I gotta go look.
So.
Not that I'm gonna buy it, but I'm curious now. Yeah, and even in his letters, he talks about...
Don't be surprised if the number is 5 digits.
Okay. Even in Tolkien's letters, he talks about the connections between the two, being at least pretty good. He would like them to have been better, but I don't know that he could have gotten them better than he did. Like, I don't really think about the disconnects when I read them.
I can't think of a better way that he could have connected them.
Pretty darn good to me.
I personally,
So-
I mean, it looks fine to me. So, this is one of those moments that I, as an author, also have to remember that when people tell you it's good, believe them. When people tell you, no, really, it's fine, believe them. Because authors are the same kind of people as artists. They just use a different medium.
Mm-hmm.
An artist may paint a masterpiece, but he will be also the most likely person, a good artist, will be the first person to point out every flaw and every defect. You know, I'm sure at some point Michelangelo looked at the altarpiece at the Sistine Chapel and went, oh, well, that guy's eye is a 16th of an inch too high.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? It's beautiful. And it's
Exactly.
fine. And you are a man. You are human. It's not going to be absolutely perfect. Because you are not absolutely perfect and you created it. Which, also granted, The Lord of the Rings comes as close to absolutely perfect as any work of fiction has ever come. Absolute perfection and flawlessness.
So what you described, I mean, I call it the creator's paradox. And it's funny how artists like both of us will do that to the things we make when people say that they're great and cool. Like, I look at the red coat.
Like I'll do something and then people will tell me it's good and then I will immediately start pointing out why it's bad.
Yeah, I do the same.
Because I don't want to believe that it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I point to the tear out in my red coasters that nobody really pays attention to, including my uncle, who's got a bit of a perfectionist streak to him. And he was like, these things are awesome. I'm like, okay. But what's also funny is that even though we give ourselves that treatment, we're still going to rightly tell other people off who act the same way that we do. Like when my mom makes dinner, and I'm like, this is good. And she's like, well, I could have done this better. And I was really stressing out about this. So I'm just like, shut up. It's awesome.
Well, yeah, when my wife makes dinner and she says, are you sure there's not too much salt in it? I'm like, dear, it's fine. It tastes delightful. It's the best food on the planet to me.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something else about a man, is that if he's unmarried, the best food in the world is cooked in his mother or his sister's kitchen. If he's married, there is no better food than that which his wife cooks.
This is true. Except for the sister part, because I'm an older brother, so I will naturally bully all of my siblings.
I say that because that's what you will gravitate towards if, God forbid, you are still unmarried by the time your mother passes away. It'll be either your sisters or one of your sisters-in-law.
All right.
Who will take that place. I guarantee it. Because your mother and your grandmother are not around to be able to cook better.
True. It ain't going to be mine, I can tell you that.
Which
So.
I will say this. So my wife cooks the best oatmeal raisin cookies in the universe. My sister-in-law makes the best pumpkin pie in the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
It is the only pumpkin pie I have ever tasted that surpasses my grandmother's. And for a man like me to say that it's better than my grandmother's, it's really damn good. Mm-hmm. It's like my grandmother's, only with candied pecans on top. It's fantastic. But other than that, my wife just cooks everything better than everybody else as far as I'm concerned. Not to say that she hasn't messed up on occasion. There haven't been times when I've said, no, you over-seasoned this one. Everybody does that from time to time. Nothing to be ashamed of. But there is no better way to over-season something than the way that my wife over-seasons things. Even when she messes up, she still messes up in the best way possible. And I don't just say that because she's in the room. And I want to flatter her because I love my wife and I want her to love me back. I actually say that because I believe it.
Of course you do. So.
And I should, as any husband should. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if you've been married 4 years or 40 years. That's what you should think. And if you don't think that about your wife, unless it's kind of objectively proven that she can't cook, you need to re-examine yourself and your marriage.
I'll get there one day. So,
And I'm sure Tolkien believed that his wife Edith was the best cook in the entire world.
and I'm sure that she didn't. So.
I'm sure she didn't, but I'm sure there was also many a night when she put the whatever English food she cooked, chicken pot pie or whatever it was, down in front of him, and he tasted it, said it was delightful, and she said, "Oh, but what about this?" And he said, "It's fine." Because they also had a near-perfect marriage. Do you know why I know that? Because the Lay of Beren and Luthien is based on their marriage.
Oh, really?
Do you know what it says on their headstones?
No, I don't.
It says J.R.R. Tolkien, Beren. Edith Tolkien, Luthien.
I mean, the trenches of World War I does count as passing through the, not the mountains of Gorgoroth, but I forget the name of the mountains in the Silmarillion, but a horrible place where Ungoliant's brood was around.
And Beren passed through there just to get back to her.
He hadn't even found her yet. He passed through there to find her. Then he just kind of stumbles into the woods of Doriath, which he wasn't supposed to get into because there was magic surrounding them. But because fate and God, he got through. And then he sees her and is like, okay.
Tinuviel, Tinuviel, he called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. If you have not listened to Clamavi de Profundis, go and do that, because there is nobody in the world that adapts Tolkien's poems to music better than they do.
Yep. That is your actual homework for after this, is just go be with your family. But
if you don't do it, aside from being listen to it with your family. There's nothing that you can't listen to in the company of your children. Listen to it with your family. And if you don't do that, I will come and find you. I'm okay if you interrupt this episode to do that. That's fine. As long as you come back and finish it.
That is allowed. It's impossible, I think, to talk about the greatness of Lord of the Rings without bringing up its Catholic foundation. So, which we've spoken to some already. God is so closely mirrored between the two. Divine Providence is so closely mirrored between the two. You get the sense that there is an intelligent will at work. Because Gandalf is sent 1,000 years ahead of time to combat Sauron. He is sent by he's an angel, and he's sent by the higher angels of the universe, who are the closest agents to the God of the universe.
And he doesn't even really know when he's
with.
sent. He just knows that he's sent to do something.
Yeah, because something's up with his memory when he comes. Same with all of the Istari.
He has an idea that something is afoot with Bilbo when he finds the ring.
Well, no, that's not
what it is, and he knows what the ring is. But he is... It's not like he spent that entire time thinking, oh, I have been sent to help Frodo Baggins destroy the ring in whatever year and help usher in the Fourth Age. No.
Yeah, no, he is sent to combat Sauron. But yeah, he doesn't know what that's going to entail. And neither do the rest of the Astari, and that's why 4 of them fail their quest at the end.
The two blues just disappeared.
The blues arguably came...
Who knows
they
what
arguably came the
Radagast.
Closest. Yeah, the blues were like the second best, because I believe they actually held back Sauron a lot in the east. But eventually Tolkien believes that they
fell.
They fell and started their own secret cults and such. So, fun stuff.
And who knows what happened to Radagast? He probably just stayed in his hut with his animals.
He saw a bunny for the first time and just fell right there.
Like, ooh, wildlife.
Yep.
And he became Middle-earth's one and only naturalist.
Mm-hmm. We know well enough what happened to Saruman. He died as Sharky in Bag End. So Gandalf actually did it. And just as one example of divine providence, there's enough things that go right. There's enough things that go right when they need to, to
Against the
influence
odds.
against the odds, to influence the story towards a good ending, while also not taking away anything from the free will of the characters themselves, and while keeping the stakes high. Like, there are ways this can get screwed up. Just because you have divine providence on your side does not mean that you will win.
Yeah.
It means that God will win.
Just because God saves you, that doesn't mean he approves of every single thing that you do.
Yep, and he has other ways to win than besides you. So he wants you to be a part of his work, but you have to be a part of his work. And if I may read from the Silmarillion, one of my favorite lines that I have referenced before in this podcast and am not done referencing. Because the Silmarillion contains a lot of the mythology of Lord of the Rings, including the creation myth. And the Lord of the Rings has its own version of Satan. Not trying to be, but that's just kind of how it went. And so the world is sung into existence via great music that the highest angels, the Ainur, which I believe are the Valar, and Gandalf's order, the whatever they are, I forget. The highest of them is Melkor. He's the most powerful of them. He begins to sing his own music. Then Ilúvatar brings up a second music. Melkor does his own version of that, and this goes back and forth 3 times. Ilúvatar stops it and says, "Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melkor, but that he may know, and all the Ainur, the other angelic beings, that I am Ilúvatar. Those things that ye have sung, including Melkor's, mind you, I will show them forth, that you may see what ye have done. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." In other words,
It would surprise me if those were the exact words that God said to the devil when he rebelled.
it honestly wouldn't be. It's not that I approve of your work, I clearly don't, but because I exist, because I am, and because you are a mere creation of mine, which I hold in existence, all that you can do, like everything you can destroy of my work will ultimately still redound to my glory. You know? And I'll let the bad happen. It'll still redound to my glory because you having the free will to do that is more glorious than you not.
See the Book of Job and the Vision of Leo the 13th.
And so if anybody is struggling with the problem of evil listening this evening, I give you that as your answer. Yeah, free will actually matters. The ability to love matters, and that involves, the ability to screw up, the ability to cause catastrophic harm. But it's worth it. One of many examples where the morality of Lord of the Rings matches our own. You know, what counts as a good man, what counts as a good decision in Lord of the Rings, also generally counts as a good man and a good decision in our world. There aren't many examples to the contrary. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
No, I don't think anybody would say that Theoden made a bad decision in deciding to give answer.
Yeah.
When the beacons were lit and Gondor called for aid.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just to circle back really quick to your point about how everything happens at its proper time. If we take Pelennor Fields, the Riders of Rohan, and likewise the Men of the Dead, led by Aragorn, appear at exactly the right time. They appear soon enough that the orcs have not already basically won, and aren't able to just turn around and defeat them too.
Mm-hmm.
But they also appear late enough that the orcs cannot recover from their entry into the battle. It's exactly the right time, strategically, when you would want your assistance to appear. It's a good comparison to the lifting of the siege of Vienna in 1683. That had to have taken place according to divine providence. The winged hussars charged down that hill at exactly the right time that the Ottoman forces were not able to recover from it. If they had come too late, the Ottomans would have taken the city. And if they had come too early, the Ottomans would have been able to recover or see them coming.
But no, there was a time appointed.
It's very much like at Pelennor Fields. Had it been too early, the orcs would have seen the riders of Rohan coming. Had it been too late, they would have already taken Minas Tirith. Does that mean it's a good thing that Gondorian lives were lost in the process? No. That does not mean that Iluvatar approves of the fact that Gondorian men, good, brave, noble Gondorian men, were killed in the time it took for the riders of Rohan to get there. But ultimately, the orcs were defeated. They were routed. Even though they breached the gate. Which, to anybody that knows about medieval warfare, when you breach the gate of a castle, that's it. In nearly every historical instance of a gate of a castle being breached, that's it. The battle's won. Doesn't matter how many archers you have in the murder hole, waiting just to rain arrows down on your men that come through. When your gate is breached, you've basically lost. But even after that, the riders of Rohan appeared at just the right time, but they were able just to lay complete waste. They and the men of the dead. Because they start to lose again, even after the riders of Rohan appear. Then the men of the dead appear, led by Aragorn. On top of that, there is a poetry to hope arriving in the most hopeless time. Everything looks hopeless. We look like it seems like we've already been defeated. And then the Rohirrim right across the hill. And they charge. But then later on, we start losing again. And we start feeling hopeless, like we've already been defeated. And then what is that coming from over there by the river? A wave of dead men has washed over the enemy, led by a king who has held them to their oath. So not only do we have more reinforcements, not only do we have that hope, but we also can see, and maybe are told, that that force is led by our true king, who has been gone for far too long. It's the greatest hope appearing in the most hopeless time. Then after that battle is won, your king says, guess what? We're not done yet. Now we attack. Now we go to the Black Gate. And we meet Sauron there. One last time.
I will be the stickler for canon and address a question that will now come up in the room, which is...
The films were in my head, not the books.
Yes. Yeah. In the books, the dead men do not come because Aragorn releases them at the Stone of Tol Erec. Or he releases them when they take the Corsair ships down in Umbar. That's it. But the ships then come up. They look like Corsair ships. They look like ships from Umbar. They look like reinforcements from Mordor.
But the Corsairs do not come.
They do not. But the hearts of the orcs are uplifted. And Eomer, the commander on the battlefield, because Theoden's fallen at this point, looks up and he sees what looks like his doom. And so what does he do? I forget precisely, but essentially he holds up his sword and his spear and says, and he acts valiantly in the face of utter despair. And then is given the most pleasant surprise in the world when he realizes it's not utter despair, it's salvation, and it is the king returning. And his companions, and the Dunedain.
Bearing aloft the Dunedain were there.
Bearing aloft the standard that Arwen herself made for Aragorn.
Yeah, that is better. I don't know why Peter Jackson did his thing.
I mean, what he did was pretty cool. Like, this is an argument for why the movies are awesome.
For the visual effect of it, yeah.
Absolutely, it still fits. Yeah, and then they have the council. And it is very clear to them what Gandalf wants them to do, what he feels that they ought to do, and it is very clear to them that it is almost certain doom for them and their men. They are under no illusions about that whatsoever.
But the
And Aragorn
distraction
said,
was needed because the point of the war is the destruction of the ring.
and Aragorn says, I'm up for it. On the field right outside his inheritance. The thing he has fought for so many years, whether under
She
an
has
alias
just now gotten back,
or not.
like
Yep,
5 minutes
he's like,
ago.
It's like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. I will lead. And then he says to Éomer, will you come with me? And Éomer says, for you I will.
And now as king of Rohan, because Theoden is dead and and his son was dead.
Yep. And Éomer doesn't have like some personal relationship with Aragorn. But he knows that he is the king of this allied country. And honor is enough of a reason to go to almost certain death at the gates of the enemy himself.
And Aragorn, I imagine, even though he is going to certain death, the manner of death that would be glorious and wonderful. Because he gets to die as a warrior, which is what he's always been, and as a king.
It's true, but I don't get the sense that he is doing it for glory.
No, he doesn't do it for glory. He does it because it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the correct thing to do. That's like an added bonus.
It is an added bonus. But
It's the, even if I die, at least I get to die as king. At least I get to die with my birthright.
I still don't get that sense. He's dying for Frodo. He's dying for all of the people that he can. He is simply doing his job, and he sees that it is his job. Gandalf sets forth the vision
as a
that
third party. The highest good of that is that he is dying so that Frodo can achieve his goal. That he is dying for somebody else. But a lesser good would be to die having achieved his own goals. Or having achieved the greatest good for himself.
And that might be somewhere within him. So, yeah. Dying for
human,
what is the greatest good within him. Dying for what the greatest good that he is capable of is ultimately what he's going after. But he knows the cost, you know. Tolkien puts it beautifully. He describes the words of Gandalf. He says the words of Gandalf. He describes there being a long silence afterwards. And then the decision is made. The weight is there. And it only gets weightier. It only gets weightier when they go to the gate.
Yeah.
And they are presented the mithril shirt that Frodo wears. And hope dies in their chests. And there is an element of glory in what they do afterwards, but there is still a sense of this is what we came to do. This is what is right.
And so we will do it.
And we will not go quietly into the night.
And even if the revelation of, even if that mithril shirt means that Frodo is gone, and that Sauron has won, we will not surrender.
Yeah.
And I will still fight you one last time. Even if I go down, I don't go down without a fight. I'm not just going to roll over and let evil take control.
Nope,
You know,
I'll give everything I got.
There's a line from an old comic that I read. It was a Bionicle comic, of all things, of two characters having a conversation while they were fighting. They were brothers at one point, and they wound up on opposite sides of a war. One of them had fallen to the darkness. And the one that had fallen says, "Don't you know that you're fighting for a lost cause?" And the one that remained said, "Don't you know that's the only kind worth fighting for?" Which is effectively the exchange between the mouth of Sauron and Aragorn at the Black Gate. You're fighting for a lost cause. Yeah, I don't care. All the better. Because I will still fight.
Yeah. And also echoes what Sam says, you know? There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. It's worth fighting for. And I don't remember in the books if he said that. He probably would have said it in Mordor. After the pass of Cirith Ungol and rescuing Frodo and other stuff. So, you're in a pretty lonesome place.
Yeah.
You're in a pretty desolate place. You're, like, out of water. You've got
even just the fact
forever
that
to
you're
walk
in
still.
enemy territory.
There's nothing of hope around you. But no, there is something good. And that good thing is probably Rosie, which I'll never see again. Or the strawberries and cream I enjoyed as a child, that I'll probably never have children to enjoy with.
Yeah.
But it's there. And it's worth me dying here for it. It's worth me giving everything here for it.
Single star shining through the clouds. Look, Mr. Frodo, it's the same star that we see in the Shire.
Yeah. Forgot about that. The fact that our listeners can listen to us talk about this with such reverence of the words and of the characters that say them and the meaning of those words, you don't get that. You get it to some degree, I think, with Chronicles of Narnia, but not in the same way.
Yeah.
Certain things about Mistborn, which you and I absolutely love, you get that about, but it's not the same.
No.
It's the antithesis of what you get out of Game of Thrones. That's just gosh awful. I mean,
I had a
after its own
college
fashion.
professor, my professor of medieval history, say, I watched Game of Thrones out of curiosity. I got it through 2 episodes and then I had to turn it off. Because it was what the Middle Ages would have been if there was no morality whatsoever.
Great.
So, Game of Thrones is what you get when the Middle Ages exist without the church. Guess what? The Middle Ages had the church, and technically they lasted 700 years. So who's the fool now?
Jon Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Definitely
You know
not
nothing.
Tyrion. Because one of the things he does is drink. And know things.
Yep. You know nothing, George R. R. Martin. Because you had the nerve to ask, what was Aragorn's tax policy? And kill the baby
Who the
orcs.
hell cares?
Yep. The right answer is he did what a just king would do. And why do we know that? Because he's an aspirational character, and because everything he does in the book is just.
And as far as we understand, there are no baby orcs. There are no female orcs, so why would there be baby orcs? I'm pretty sure they just spring out of the ground. Out of the mud pits.
And honestly, even if there are, the same principle applies. He would have done what a just king would have done.
Yeah. And we can argue about what necessarily that is.
Mm-hmm. But the more important thing is that he did what was just. I don't know what the just decisions I'm going to have to make tomorrow are. I'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah.
All I can do is try and be the most just man I can be today, and I'll probably have it figured out tomorrow. By the grace of God. Same applies here. Tying in with the aspirational side of this, with the transcendental side of this, and also with just how we've spoken of these different characters so far, is just the beautiful way in which Tolkien writes about them. Like, you and I have both praised Sanderson in the modern era for extraordinary character building.
Yes.
He is elite at what he does. He is amazing.
And I have greater experience with him than you do, because I've actually read most of the Stormlight Archive.
Yeah,
I've yet to read Wind and Truth, but I decided... I made the foolish decision to start over at the Way of Kings after Wind and Truth was released before I got to it, so it takes for bloody ever.
No. They are long books from what you've told me and from what I have seen. But I have read all 7 of the Mistborn books, and the number of things I can criticize the Mistborn books for are few. They are there. The latter 4 in particular are not really child-friendly, unfortunately. But Neither are the first three, actually. But for a good, proper, mature Catholic, they are elite, and I have nothing bad to say about them.
Most of them,
About the first three.
most of the failing in Sanderson's work comes down to him being a Mormon.
Well, it gets back to the
failing of the worldview that he actually just, in general, has, which
Yeah.
is false, but that's not his fault.
Well, it gets to my earlier point, right? I mean, like, part of why Lord of the Rings is so real is because God is real. Like, the God of the universe of Lord of the Rings is more or less the same as our own. And because that foundation of the world, the foundation of the world, is the same, a lot of other things flow out of that naturally. Yeah, Sanderson's world is based on some sort of deity that I don't really know about, but was split into 9 shards and that are like elements of his power. And it's not the same thing.
No.
You know, it's not bad, but it's not the same thing.
No, it's interesting. Sort of in the same way that Greek mythology is interesting. Or that Egyptian mythology is interesting.
Mm-hmm. But you don't build a satisfying worldview on either, on any of them. So, but to my point about the language, we've already talked about some of it. But just to offer up a couple examples, Sanderson can do extraordinary character building. Even Jar Jar Martin can do some interesting things with, politics and such, and constructing of different storylines.
I would say big picture of Game of Thrones is excellent. The big picture stuff that is done is very well done. I'm sorry, A Song of Ice and Fire. I should have gotten the name of the book series correct. But I also don't really care.
Yeah, it's still Game of Thrones as far as I'm concerned.
That's the most respect that I'm ever going to show pornography.
That's the reason why I don't recommend it, people. Beyond the flaws of, world building. Mm-hmm. But none of those authors write like Tolkien does throughout the entire book, but I'll pick a couple examples. After Sauron is overthrown, there's a great gathering of all the hosts on the field of Cormallin. And Frodo and Sam are there in a tent, and they get led out with the guards, making a path for them. And this entire host is waiting for them. And they are set upon thrones by Aragorn, and all the host bows to them. And then a minstrel comes up. And he says, everybody here, listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers in the Ring of Doom. Which, funny enough, Sam had actually joked about, like, that'd be a really cool song to listen to. So Sam says, oh, great glory and splendor.
Overheard that and said, I'm going to call it that.
So Sam says, oh, great glory and splendor, and all my wishes have come true. And then he wept. And all the host laughed and wept. And in the midst of their merriment and tears, the clear voice of the minstrel rose like silver and gold. And all men were hushed. And he sang to them, now in the elven tongue, now in the speech of the West, until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed. And their joy was like swords. And they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. Now listen to that, and just imagine Imagine the most important thing you've done in your life. And imagine all the hell you've gone to attain those things. To be given those things by God. And to work with Him in it. And sit with that a long while. And you will understand not just how aspirational The Lord of the Rings is, but how good Tolkien can write. How well he understands and can represent the human heart.
Even in his time, nobody was writing like that. You find any other novel from 1948 or 1952 or 1956, nobody would have been writing like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Animal Farm wasn't written that way.
But even among the British, nobody was writing like that. Because Tolkien set out to create an epic myth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he did. And he did it to near perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I give it a 99.9%, even though I don't know what that 0.1% fault is. Because that's the absolute minimum fault that something can have that is not created by divine hands.
Yep. Sanderson can write an epic description of trust in the qualities that he wants his characters to learn to embody. He can write great descriptions of how they feel. He's quite good at that.
And of how love takes root in the human heart, which was Orson Scott Card's estimation of the Well of Ascension. Said that Sanderson was astoundingly wise because of his ideas on the nature of leadership and how love takes root in the human heart.
Yeah.
That's at least nearly a direct quote. And in the Well of Ascension, yeah. That is what that story is about. It's about leadership and the love between a man and a woman.
Man, he does an elite job. But he doesn't know how to describe it, and he's not setting out to, but he's not going to describe somebody feeling a joy as if it's a sword. Which somehow is more fulfilling, because it lets me imagine that even more. I'm not trying to relate to it, I'm trying to imagine it. Like, it's something that's almost too good to be true. But I know that it is the fulfillment of all my desires, right? Kind of. Yeah. To feel joy like a sword. To feel it that deep and cutting and beautiful.
Yeah, and if you don't have to just like scientifically dissect it and go, what precisely does that mean? Like, just listen to it. You felt joy like a sword.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means it thrust into you. It can mean one of two things. It has thrust into you like a sword has pierced your heart, but in the best way possible. Or it has cut through the gloom and darkness of your mind, like the sharpest blade ever made. Either way, you felt joy like swords.
Exactly.
That's what it means. It means you felt joy like swords. I don't know how else to describe it. Stop looking for an allegory. Stop looking for a hidden meaning. Stop looking for, well, this represents this, because it doesn't. Galadriel is Galadriel. And that's it. Take them for what they are, because that is how they were made.
Yeah, Galadriel is not meant to represent something. Although the closest thing would probably be your really crazy and edgy and morally questionable aunt.
Instead of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen. Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, Sharon, put the wine down. Just. I will also interject here. No one has ever written as beautifully as Tolkien. There is one man who came close, and that was Robert Jordan with The Wheel of Time. The last few pages of The Lord of the Rings are the most beautiful, elegant, and true things that I have ever read. Granted, because it's 14 books that are all like that thick, I have not read even very much of The Wheel of Time, mostly because I've been interrupted. Actually, I've barely gotten a quarter of the way through the first book, but the prologue of the first book of The Wheel of Time is astoundingly well written. And beautifully written. And in the first paragraph of the first chapter, it says, "There are no beginnings or endings with the Wheel of Time, but this certainly was a beginning." Again, a flawed worldview from the start, but no one should, I doubt will, or should, ever doubt Robert Jordan's ability as a wordsmith. And it's sad that he passed away before he finished it and handed it over to Brandon Sanderson to finish. But no one should ever question his skill with words, because he wrote beautifully too. I would say Tolkien wrote with a particularly English beauty, and Robert Jordan wrote with a particularly American sort of beauty. Because he was American. I think he was from Utah. Or Nevada, one of those places. I'm not positive. Somebody will correct me.
Hmm.
But he's the one that has not mentioned, and I would be remiss if I did not mention Robert Jordan, even in passing.
Hmm.
Or out of obligation, because I give him second place. I
Okay.
haven't even read The Wheel of Time in its entirety, not even close. I haven't even read The Eye of the World in its entirety. I have a book that was published post-mortem called The Warrior of the Altai that I have read probably a third of. And I still give Robert Jordan second place to Tolkien. It will not be higher than that. He will not surpass Tolkien. But I can already tell by what little I've experienced that he deserves the second place. And that is a podium like Formula One. It matters that you podium.
Yeah. That's respect. I don't think of Robert Jordan because I haven't read any of his stuff, but I am somewhat intrigued to read it now. And I think
everybody should at least read The Eye of the World.
Okay.
Which is the first book of The Wheel of Time. I don't blame you for not wanting to read all of it because it's 14 books, and at some point, to quote somebody online that I heard, it feels like nerd homework. Like I'm just reading through this so I can say that I did.
But you said it's beautiful. And that speaks to something. That speaks to something that... I mean, put it this way. I love the beauty of what Sanderson does. That if you think it surpasses that, then I ain't gonna argue with you.
Yeah, I would put Sanderson at third. Behind Robert Jordan and Tolkien. And Tolkien will never be matched or surpassed, as far as I'm concerned. Won't stop me from trying. But as far as I'm concerned, he can never be matched or surpassed. In quality and eloquence.
It'll be darn hard.
And I don't even know that I would be able to do it, mostly because I don't want to take 10 years before I even put pen to page on the story itself. I'm impatient. I just want to get on with it. Mostly because I have a different temperament than Tolkien did. I'm a cranky old man like him, but I have a different temperament than him. And I'm impatient, and I just kind of want to get on with it. And I want my story to be one that evolves and sort of writes itself organically.
I think what you need to do is just smoke as much as he did, and then you're going to be fine.
You know what? That might help. I should tell my wife that. I just need to smoke as much as Tolkien did, and that'll probably help. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. Only 4 years of marriage, and I can already hear her facial expressions.
What did that one mean?
I'm going to murder you.
Well, you've survived this far, so you're doing something right. But, and a further, I'll only give one other example of the beauty of Tolkien's language. And that's how, that's part of the story of how Faramir and Eowyn fall in love.
Which my wife constantly compares us to, by the way, her and myself.
Okay. But they're both in the Houses of Healing in Gondor, and this is happening while Aragorn and Éomer and the other hosts are going to the Black Gate. Yes, we wait for the stroke of doom, said Faramir. And they said no more. And it seemed to them that they stood upon the wall, as they stood upon the wall, that the wind died, and the light failed, and the sun was bleared. And all the sounds in the city or in the lands about were hushed. Neither wind nor voice, nor bird call, nor rustle of leaf. Nor their own breath could be heard. The very beating of their hearts was stilled. Time halted. And as they stood so, their hands met and clasped, though they did not know it. And still they waited, for they knew not what. Then presently it seemed to them that above the ridges of their distant mountains, another vast mountain of darkness rose, towering up like a wave that should engulf the world. And about it lightnings flickered, and then a tremor ran through the earth, and they felt the walls of the city quiver. A sound like a sigh went up from all the lands about them, and their hearts suddenly beat again. It reminds me of Numenor, said Faramir, and wondered to hear himself speak. Of Numenor, said Eowyn. Yes, said Faramir, of the great land of Western Est that foundered, and of the great dark wave climbing over the green lands and above the hills and coming on, darkness unescapable. I often dream of it. Then you think the darkness is coming, said Eowyn? Darkness unescapable? And suddenly she drew close to him. No, said Faramir, looking into her face. It was but a picture in the mind. I do not know what is happening. The reason of my waking mind says that great evil is befallen, and we stand at the end of days. But my heart says nay. And all my limbs are light, and a hope and joy are come to me that no reason can deny. A page and a half later, he proposes to her. So,
Even when all seems lost, even when darkness covers the sky, a man can still fall in love. For without that, there would be no more men. You know, even as the red and black Nazi threat hung over Europe like a cloud, young men and young women still fell in love. If you want to go back farther, even as the threats of Vandals and Huns and the Khan loomed in the distance, man and wife still became one. Even as the Roman Empire, the greatest symbol of security, unity, and order so far in the history of the world, collapsed, caved in on itself, and was shattered. Somewhere in some villages, a man still asked a woman to marry him.
and so love is the greatest force in the universe.
And as my wife had fittingly engraved on the back of a pocket watch that she gave me for our first anniversary, Amor omnia vincit. That is, love conquers all. Which is the entire message, ultimately, of The Lord of the Rings. It is the entire message of sacred scripture. And it is the entire message of the story of mankind. Amor omnia vincit. Love conquers all.
I don't think I need to say anything else. I really don't.
Now do you believe that my wife and I are Faramir and Eowyn? I have on more than one occasion called her my wild shield maiden of Rohan.
Yeah, she kind of is. In all of the best ways.
And she, on at least one occasion, has called me her hero of Gondor.
I picture you more as a member of the Rohirrim. But
I picture myself as that too, but if I could be any man of Gondor, it would be Faramir. Mostly because he spends most of his time away from the city. He just gets to spend most of his time in the woods with his men.
He's in the woods with his men, yep.
And that sounds delightful. Which is, they're technically, what are they? Are they the Rangers of Gondor? They're not Dunedain. But they're not actively soldiers either. They're closer to Rangers and Scouts.
Well, they're there to kind of be the Dunedain of the South. Mm-hmm. Partially for the protection, they're leading a lot more raids than the Dunedain did.
Well, there's not really a war in the north for the Dunedain to partake in.
No, not anymore. So, but yeah, there is a shared nature there. Mm-hmm. No wonder we're brothers, though. The Lord of the Rings, which character are you tests that I did growing up, I was Faramir in at least a couple of them. So, but yeah. So many cool characters. This gets at the aspirational side again. There's so many cool characters that you could be like, that you could strive to be like. You can want to be the king like Aragorn. You can want to be the humble artist ranger of the south like Faramir. You can want to be like Baragond. If you don't know who that is, read the books.
Oh, I forgot about Baragond.
Yep. You can want to be like Imrahil. If you forgot about him, read the books and then understand him better with an excellent video on him by In Deep Geek. You can want to be wise like Gandalf. You can want to be simple and I'm just going to accept this quest and do everything I can like Frodo. You can want to be the simple helper to him like Sam. And Sam's the real hero of the story. You can want to have the nobility of the Rohirrim. You can want to, give your life even in the face of your faults, like Boromir. And there's obviously characters you don't want to be like Denethor.
I was gonna say, yeah, just as long as you don't want to be like Denethor.
Yep.
But at least, even if you don't want to be like Denethor, there is a way in which you can at least understand him.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is excused. None of his actions, particularly the wicked ones, are excused. But they can at least be explained and understood. That yes, I can see how a man could fall that way.
Mm-hmm.
I could see how a man could give in to despair the way that he did, because he watched. Because there's no indication that he was a bad steward.
No.
Or that his father was a bad steward. But, he has gotten used to his position, effectively being the king in the king's absence. And now he starts hearing that this ranger from the north has claims to the throne. And, reports start coming more frequently, and they start coming more accurately, and you start to think, oh, this ranger from the north is the king. And when he returns, I will no longer be needed. Which is not true, but it is something that you think of. Because the steward still has a job when the king is there. He just has more work when the king is absent.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that you have gotten used to, your life as you know it, has come to an end, and then a cloven horn is put at your feet. One that you recognize because it is the only one of its make, the one that belonged to your eldest and favored son. And there is only one option, that he has fallen. So you're about to lose your job, your oldest son is dead. And now, the largest enemy force you have ever seen is at the gate.
And you know how big it is, and you know what's waiting, even if you beat it.
And you know what has led it. You know what has sent it. And you do not see the riders of Rohan, who are on their way. You do not see Aragorn bringing the Dunedain. All you see is death. So it is easy to understand how, well, once you take those things into account, it's easy to understand and to see how nihilism and despair can take root in the human mind. So in the case of the men who really existed who were like Denethor, they ought to be prayed for above all else, because they were not wicked men. Denethor is not a wicked man. He is not some irredeemably evil man. He just surrendered. In here, he surrendered to his own doubt, his own fear, and his own sadness and sorrow. Because all he knew is that his oldest son was dead. He did not have the opportunity to hear Aragorn say, "He died nobly, he died properly, and I buried him, or I sent him over Rauros Falls with the honor due to a soldier of Gondor."
Mm-hmm.
which is the second best possible way for a man to die. The other one being calmly, quietly in his bed, surrounded by his loved ones.
Yeah.
Without being told of the kind of death that his son died. And without knowing that there were reinforcements coming. And without knowing that this king is a just and good man. And he will not kick you in the teeth and toss you out on your ear, like that voice in your head is whispering. So the men who were like Denethor should certainly be prayed for, as should all who fall to despair.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's at least understandable.
What does it take for a strong man like Denethor, incredibly strong of mind, who could contest with the will of Sauron through the Palantir for as long as he did? Which was far too long. Any amount of time was too long. It took a long time for him to break. But how did that type of man come to wanting to burn himself and his son like the heathen kings of old? Despair and surrender, like you said.
And Sauron's strategy in that, which similarly to how the devil's strategies are, is to take him at his, even in the case of Denethor, perhaps his only weakness, his son. Both of his sons. And Sauron is able to whisper to him through the Palantir, "Your sons are dead. Your line is no more. You will never be a grandfather. And my armies are at your gate. You may as well just die." And anybody that has ever gone through sort of a sudden hit of depression understands that. Because everything can be growing great, and you can think you're doing just fine for months. And then there's one thing that can hit you in the gut and tell you that you're not worth anything and you may as well be dead.
Well, and it's a whole host of things, and it's a grinding over time, in his case. But I know what that's like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Got plenty of experience with that, without getting too deep in the details. So we have our things that, just like we have our things we can aspire to in Lord of the Rings, we have the opposite of aspiration as well here, you know? Mm-hmm. We have the cautionary tales. Fulton Sheen says that any sinner can become a great saint, and any saint can become a great sinner. Lord of the Rings shows us what both of those are like. We have the repentance of Boromir. We also have the despair of his father.
And every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future.
So one way to view Lord of the Rings in line with this aspirational theme is to view it as the lives of the saints. And the lives of the saints used to be told. They weren't told as things that we could relate to. Mm-hmm. They weren't told as, okay, well, this was what breakfast looked like. You know?
Yeah.
The Gospels aren't even this way. I mean, sometimes we're told that there's a meal on the shore, right? Or there's something else going on. But the wedding feast to Cana, we're not told what the bride and groom are like at all. We're not told about the ceremony. We're not told about all the people invited. We're told there was a wedding feast.
And that's all we need to know.
And all we need to know is there was a lot of wine, but there wasn't enough. They ran out of it. And what mattered was Our Lady saying, "They have no wine." And our Lord bowing to her wishes and saying, "All right, well, I'll make some more." And then him doing so. Or it's the meal on the shore. We're not told about them hauling up all the boats on the shore and gutting the fish and everything else. It's just, they went and they had a meal on the shore. And then what's the important part? Christ asked Peter, "Do you love me?" 3 times. And what follows, follows. What matters most in Lord of the Rings is not, although it's fun, every meal that is had. Although we get great detail on that. We're told that Farmer Maggot's wife made a great dish of mushrooms and bacon for the hobbits as they passed through. Sounds like that'd be good.
Oh, that does sound really good.
Yeah.
Damn it, now I
But
want bacon mushroom.
But we're not told about all the small talk they had and such, because the point was they had a great meal.
Mm-hmm.
You know? We're not told about all of the conversations that the Fellowship would have had during all of the walking that people make fun of Lord of the Rings for them doing. The point was that they were walking. The point was that they were on this adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires that. You know? We're not told about all the things that Frodo did. After he returns to the Shire and after they cast out Sharky and his men. Kill Sharky.
'Cause there's a lot of time between that and when Frodo goes to the Undying Lands.
Yeah. And we're told some stuff that happens. We're told that, his wound bothers him every year. The wound from where the Witch King stabbed him.
On the anniversary of the day he was stabbed.
And eventually we are told that, he's going to be going to his new home. Not to live there eternally, but a fitting place to pass for a man who has done so much. And when Sam finally comes home, we're not told about the small talk necessarily, although I'm sure that's important and beautiful and romantic.
Rosie
We're not
doesn't
told
even
about
really have anything to say.
Yeah. We're not told about whatever shenanigans his kids were up to.
Which I'm
he
sure was adorable.
Yeah.
Full-grown
We're not
hobbits
told-
are cute. I'm sure their children are just absolutely adorable.
Mm-hmm. We're not even told what the meal was. We are told that there was light and a fire in the hearth and dinner and that he was expected. And that Rosie drew him into his chair and set little Eleanor in his lap. And he, instead of commenting on the fire and the light and the meal and his wife and everything else, he puts it perfectly in one sentence. Well, I'm back. And so there is something, because it is summed up succinctly, but in a proper type of succinctness, and because it is aspirational, it is something we can live up to. It is something we can treat as the lives of the saints in a sense. I'm not saying all of these characters are saints, obviously, but there is a reason why it is so well loved by everybody.
And Sam sitting down and saying, "Well, I'm back." So my grandfather was a man of very few words. Unless he was telling a story, and I will forever be remiss that I did not sit down and record any of his stories. But after my grandfather had received the last rites and had received the Blessed Sacrament for the very last time, he put his head back on the pillow and he looked at my grandmother and said, "I'm done. I cannot imagine a better death, and I imagine that the death of Samwise Gamgee is something similar to that." He probably looked at Rosie, or he looked at Eleanor, or he looked at his son, and said, "I'm done."
It's a shame he didn't, because he goes to the Undying Lands.
That's true, because he bore the ring for a little while.
Yeah. But even over there, he doesn't become immortal when he goes there, so he does die.
Yeah, there will be a death at some point.
But imagine being amongst the angels, being with Frodo, being with his master,
Being with Gandalf.
being with Gandalf,
And with
and
all
getting
of
to
the
say,
elves.
I'm done. Fought the good fight, finished the race. I've kept the faith. So the point still holds.
And Tolkien would have probably espoused the same view as Chesterton. This is something that he illustrates in making Sam the great hero of the story. There is nothing more that the devil fears than an ordinary man, his ordinary wife, and their ordinary children. There is nobody more ordinary in all of Middle-earth than Samwise Gamgee. And yet there is no greater hero in all of the histories of Middle-earth than Samwise Gamgee, because he carried his master up the hill, his best friend, his brother, carried him up the mountain to complete his task. I would wager probably gives him a higher place in eternity than even Frodo, who bore the ring for so long.
Might.
For without Sam, and Sam takes his brother upon his back and carries him across the finish line. And just by purely human standards, in that case, who has more glory? The man who finished or the man who helped him finish?
The sung and the unsung.
In eternity, the unsung are the ones that have more glory. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
That minstrel I referenced says, I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom. What's Sam's response? It's not, hey, that wouldn't have happened with me. It's, no, my dream has come true. Oh, great glory and splendor. There's not a hint of arrogance in him.
It's, I will sing to you of Frodo and the Nine Fingers, and not Sam of the Frying Pan.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam did not lament not being in the title of the song.
Yeah.
He lamented having to leave his cooking pans behind in Mordor.
Yeah. Oh, those must have been really nice.
Wow.
Really nice cast iron cooking pans. Oh, that does hurt a little bit.
They had to cast them off while they were in Mordor, and the clatter of them was like a death knell in the heart, is what Tolkien writes.
Well, if they were cast iron, they probably weren't just Sam's. They probably belonged to his old gaffer.
Could have.
And his old gaffer, and his old gaffer before him. And now they're rusting in a trench in Mordor somewhere. Instead of taking what should be their rightful place, hanging in a kitchen.
And does that seem simple? Yes, but this gets to the point of there's nothing the devil hates more than an ordinary man, his ordinary wife, and their ordinary children, where that means something. By and large, our society, at least myself included, doesn't feel that way anymore.
No.
But we ought to.
Yeah. As I said, there is no hero greater in all of the histories of Middle-earth than Samwise Gamgee. And yet who sings of him? Nobody. Where is all the attention on Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom?
Mm-hmm.
Where is all the attention on Feanor and his arrogance and horrible mistake? On Isildur and his staring the devil in the face, on Aragorn and his last stand at the Black Gate, even on Boromir and his valiant death at the hands of Uruks.
Mm-hmm.
But even such as they will not have as great an eternal reward as Samwise Gamgee, because it is to him that the credit for the victory ultimately ought to go. And yet it is he who wants nothing more than to just sit in his chair by the fire with his little girl in his lap. And I can't think of anything better than that. And we could have ended multiple times, but now I think we actually will.
People make fun of Lord of the Rings having multiple endings, so this is fitting.
Well, in that case, we are very Tolkien-esque in our...
Yes.
In this particular podcast, The Lord of the Rings, the books have like 7 endings, so this podcast has ended like 12 times at this point.
Well, now it has ended. Go be with your family. Go sit your little Eleanor in your lap and read her Lord of the Rings.
And listen to Clamavi de Profundis if you have not already.
Yes. And have the most excellent of evenings with the fire in your hearth.
And enjoy a good pint of beer and a good bowl of tobacco. Even if your children are present, I don't care what the CDC says.
It smells good. They'll like it.
They will love that smell. And they will remember it for the rest of their lives.
Have a good evening.